As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Probably the most iconic and realistic portrayal of the New York criminal underworld, Goodfellas, gave us some insight into how the Mafia worked from the inside. Goodfellas follows the rise and fall of Henry Hill and his crew, depicting the highs and extreme lows that a life of crime provides. It meticulously portrays the glamorous side of being a gangster, having wealth, power and respect, all driving factors that motivate individuals to partake in such a lifestyle. However, it doesn't shy away from the brutality, betrayals and really destroys the illusion of invincibility and clearly states that it doesn't end well for anyone in that life. As wild as the events in Goodfellas were, they are just a sample of how insane the lives of the real-life characters it portrayed actually were and what events really took place. Goodfellas was based on the non-fiction novel by Nicholas Pileggi titled Wiseguy that recounts the life of 𝐔𝐬 Mafia family associate turned informant, Henry Hill, where he details his 30-year association with the mob, and how his loyal crew, Jimmy the Gent Burke, Thomas Desimone and a few others, who later all turn on each other. So, overall, how real was it? Well, you'll soon find out, but shockingly almost every single scene in the film was real. Yes, there were some over-dramatizations as it is firstly a film, but what's really surprising was what was left out of the films. Brilliantly played by the legend Robert Deniro, Jimmy the Gent Conway, or in real life Jimmy Burke, was a well-known associate of the 𝐔𝐬 crime family. Born in the Bronx, New York, at a young age he was put into an orphanage later adopted by the Burke family. Like in the film, he was well respected and liked by everyone he made money with, even though he couldn't be made into the 𝐔𝐬 family because he was Irish. That didn't stop him from building a name for himself in the criminal underworld for his sheer ferocity and ruthlessness. He was a criminal mastermind specializing in various criminal activities such as being a hitman, businessman, contract killer, mob enforcer, loan shark, extortionist, racketeer, hijacker, and drug trafficker. Like it was mentioned in the film, Jimmy from a very young age began to be involved in various criminal activities. As he approached his teens, Burke began to get in trouble with the law and spent considerable time in jail. In 1949, aged 18, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for forgery. Burke refused to rat anyone else out and become an informant, thus learning the two most important things in life.
Look at me. Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
Behind bars, he mixed with a number of Mafia members and other criminals of all nationalities in New York, therefore making a name for himself early on. Burke was a huge man, he had an immense and fearsome presence. As a result of earlier work as a bricklayer for the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers, he has been described to have been built like a bodybuilder or professional heavyweight boxer, along with a temper to match. His job as a union bricklayer during the New York City construction boom was short-lived, and he gave it up to pursue a life of crime. He stood 6 feet 5 inches and weighed over 270 pounds. He petrified men due to his intimidating size and fearsome reputation as a ruthless mafia enforcer and ferocious killer. But he was also known to be very nice, polite and charming at times, even though he mostly was a stone-cold killer. In the film we do get a sample of his ferocity, but not the extent he is described in real life. Probably the most standout character in the film, played by another legend Joe Pecsi, Tommy DeVito, or in real life Thomas Desimone, was just as ruthless and as insane as in the film. Desimone had a reputation for brutality, cruelty and violence. He was known as a vicious killer, and was widely feared for his use of extreme violence, known for killed people for the smallest reasons. Desimone was regarded as a psychopath who enjoyed killing people. As vicious and wild as he was in the film, he was toned down compared to the real Tommy. Born into a family full of mobsters, Tommy from a young age enamored with the world of the Mafia, being around relatives, more notably Los Angeles mob bosses Rosario Desimone and Frank Desimone. Two Gun Tommy, or Tommy D, was a mob enforcer, hitman, and associate of the 𝐔𝐬 crime family in New York. Like in the film, Desimone worked under Mafia capo Paul with Jimmy Burke, and was later introduced to Henry Hill. He committed what is believed to have been his first murder on March 15, 1968 at the age of 18. While he was walking down the street with Hill, Desimone spotted Howard Goldstein, a random stranger unknown to either gangster. Hill recalls Desimone turning to him and saying, "Hey Henry, watch this." Desimone yelled and pulled out his pistol and shot and killed the guy. That casually, he didn't even think too much about it. Tommy Desimone, Henry Hill, and Jimmy Burke were involved in truck hijackings, armed robbery, bank robbery, burglary, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, cigarette smuggling, auto theft, loan sharking, protection rackets, bookmaking, dealing and fencing of stolen property, extortion, fraud, arson, contract killing and murder. From all recounts of Tommy, he was a vicious, unstable psychopath who never hesitated to kill. This was well portrayed in the film, however also surprisingly toned down. The only major difference according to Henry Hill was that in real life he was a large, imposing man, as opposed to the film showing him as short and possessing an extreme Napoleonic complex. However, Hill did praise Pesci for doing an overall excellent performance capturing the character. One of the most important scenes in the film, that its repercussions would ripple, was the murder of Billy Batts, real-life name William Bentvena. Unlike in the film, Batts was taken out not just because he insulted Tommy, rather there were more factors that led to that incident. In the book, Henry Hill said they threw a welcome home party at a lounge, which was owned by Jimmy Burke, for William Billy Batts Bentvena, a made man in Carmine Fatico's crew, the same crew John Gotti was a part of, in the Gambino crime family. Batts had just been released from prison after serving a 6-year term for drug possession. Hill states that Batts saw Tommy and asked him if he still shined shoes, and Tommy took this as an insult. Hill also said that Batts provoked Tommy because he wanted to impress some mobsters from another crime family. A couple of minutes later, when that interaction was going to be forgotten, Tommy leaned over to Henry Hill and Jimmy Burke and said he's gonna kill him. Hill saw that he was serious about it. A couple of weeks later, on June 11, 1970, Batts went over to the suite, owned by Hill in Queens, to go drinking with Desimone's crew, including Henry, Tommy, and Jimmy. Later that night, Tommy took his girlfriend home and Jimmy started making Batts feel comfortable. 20 minutes later, Tommy arrived with a revolver and a plastic mattress cover. He walked over to him at the corner of the bar and attacked Batts. Before Batts was attacked, Jimmy Burke tightened his arms around Batts, and he was pistol-whipped with the revolver. Batts was so intoxicated from heavy drinking he failed to make any effort to defend himself. In the book, Hill said that before Desimone started to beat Batts, Desimone yelled, "Shine these shoes." Desimone killed Batts not only because he had insulted him, but also because Burke had taken over Batts' loan shark business while in prison. According to Hill, Batts had been complaining to Joseph Gallo about getting back this racket. Not wanting to return the business to Batts, Burke knew sooner or later he would have to be killed. After the beating, the three men put the body in the trunk of Hill's 1970 Buick Electra, and later, while the three men were driving, they discovered that Batts was not dead. Later, they needed a knife and a shovel, so Tommy recommended grabbing those items from his mother's house. While they were hoping to sneak in and out in the early morning hours, Mrs. Desimone had already awoken and invited them to have breakfast and coffee with her. Later in the drive, closer to their destination, Hill said it had been an hour of driving, and he kept getting mad about the noises in the trunk and finally slammed the brakes and went to investigate. In the film version of Batts' death, Tommy stabs him 8 times and Jimmy shoots Bentvena 4 times. At the time of the murder in 1970, Bentvena was 49 years old, and was a respected and a feared made man in the Gambino crime family, as well as a personal friend of Gambino boss John Gotti. Murdering a made man without the official consent of his family's leadership was an unforgivable offense in the Mafia code of, especially by a rival family and a mere associate such as Desimone, and it was this murder, after the Gotti crew definitively tied Desimone to the killing, that led to Desimone's own murder as retaliation. As accurate as the film was, there's some notable differences. The biggest one being that the real Henry actually wanted out multiple times throughout his life. Even though Henry always wanted to be a gangster, he did attempt to leave it behind multiple times throughout his life. He even joined the Air Force in 1960 as a way to escape, but his bad habits that he picked up on the streets ended up throwing him back in it. He tried going legitimate by purchasing a club called The Suite, which you might have guessed did not work. Henry's decision to give up Jimmy and Paulie makes much more sense when looking at how he actually felt most of the time, as he knew very well how psychotic they really were.